Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Health Wealth Podcast. This week, I have a very special guest. I speak to Dr. Tom Ingegno, talk about shifting from treating symptoms to a preventative type of medicine and treatment for illness. We talk about some of the ancient healing techniques he uses, like acupuncture and cupping. Talk about the importance of the mind-body connection, how traditional practices benefit mental health. We talk about the parallels between modern biohacking and ancestral living. And we look at the overall approach of holistic health and how you can apply that to today's society. There is plenty of usable information in there for people that you're going to find very useful if you're looking to improve your health. So take a listen and let's jump on into the show. So, Tom, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here. Do you want to just first give us a little background on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure, Ryan. So I am an acupuncturist. I have my doctorate in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I've been in practice as we're recording this almost 24 years. I saw a need, especially in the U.S. here, for some changes in medicine. Specifically, we can have a huge systems discussion, but more so this idea that we're so focused on only when someone's sick, only when
Mhm.
symptoms arise, only when there's something on a blood test, there's something on the X-ray, and not so much in how to keep. And Chinese medicine has this concept called Yang Shen, right? And it's lifestyle medicine. Yang Shen translates to like nourishing life. And my mentor used to say this all the time. He goes, you're focusing on the good things that the patient does, right? We're trying to build that up. We're trying to tap into that patient's natural healing. The disease, yes, it has a name, it has symptoms, it has a specific pathology, but if we can build that person up, hopefully they can stimulate their body to do what it needs to do so they can recover.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I think, as you said there, preventative medicine is something I feel that it's maybe becoming a bit more of a thing that's spoken about in the last couple of years, but not
Yeah.
necessarily from big pharma, more from kind of grassroots. But I think it's good that it's coming to that because, like you say, it's so much easier to prevent something rather than to have to, cure it when it comes and you've got all these issues and health problems. So definitely that is a way forward. I know.
Mhm.
Could you just at the beginning, for people who don't maybe know exactly what it is, could you give us like a basic sort of overview definition? I'm sure there's way more detail you could go into.
Yeah,
Just a
yeah,
basic
yeah.
one of acupuncture, and I know cupping is another thing you're big on. So just like a
Yeah.
basic overview of what those two
So
things are.
so let's give you the whole animal first, and then we'll kind of get into some of the parts.
Yeah.
So East Asian medicine is a whole family of practices, right? So some of that is meditation and exercise, qigong, which is breathing exercises, Chinese herbal medicine, which has such a rich history and pulls herbs from all over the globe. Um, and then acupuncture is one of the body work methods. So acupuncture is the insertion of needles into various points on the body to stimulate that body to have specific physiological changes. Um, Acupuncture has been around as a formalized system for about 3,000 years. And when we talk about it in the West, more so, people don't understand that there's multiple different systems. So there's an expression in China: 10 acupuncturists, 10 treatments. I have three associates at my office. All four of us, none of us would treat the same way. Hopefully, every one of us will get you results, right? And then within that, cupping therapy is one of these adjunct therapies in Chinese medicine, which isn't even Chinese in origin. We're not exactly sure where it comes from. It might actually be closer to the Middle East. The oldest text is from Egypt in 15 BC. Uh, but we don't know. We know it was being used long before it was even written down. And it somehow migrated towards China and was written about in the classic Chinese medicine text in about the 300 ADs. But they were talking about it from the standpoint of, hey, we know this is folk medicine and people are doing this at home, but you as physicians should be doing this as well. And cupping is basically it is so low tech, and that's one of the reasons I love it. Really, all it requires is you to create a vacuum in a jar or a cup, right? So the first cups were wedges of bamboo or clay pots or sections of buffalo horn, right? Water buffalo horn is hollow on the inside. So some really cool photos on the internet with people with like, horns sticking out of their back, but really creating that suction pulls circulation into that tissue. And fresh blood is kind of the key to healing, right? So if we know we have a tight muscle, well, let's pull some fresh blood into there. One, it'll flush out the metabolic waste, and two, it's going to bring in oxygen and nutrients that keeps that body healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things I think people have heard of a lot, but a lot of people probably don't know exactly what it is, or even why it's used, and what the benefits are, which we'll definitely get into. But one quick one before we move on, I always like to ask
Yeah.
people when they, when you have like a specific thing that you're into and this specific, skills that you have, like how did you get into it? Because it's not the normal thing that people
Yeah.
would get into.
Yeah, so I always kind of get to tell this one story that kind of got stuck, hidden in my memory. It wasn't in the front, but I used to help my grandfather at the pharmacy, cleaning shelves. He was a pharmacist. He owned a pharmacy that had a large portion of people that were Latinos in the area, right? And one of them was a day laborer. I'm sure several of them were day laborers, and basically that means somebody hands them cash at the end of the day. They pick them up in a truck and say, "Hey, we're going to go do this today." Um, and the guy was getting a prescription filled, and my grandfather was counting it out, and he said, this guy's this is the early '90s, 3 pills a day for the rest of his life. They're $5 a pill. That's $15. That's a lot of money per month, especially when somebody's getting like who knows how much cash at the end of the day. And my grandfather looked at me and said, "There's got to be a better way, and I'm hoping you find it." And it's not that, clearly he was a pharmacist. He wasn't anti-Western medicine. He wasn't anti-drugs, but there wasn't this focus on what could be done to stimulate the body's innate healing potential, right?
Mhm.
And that kind of got locked away. He died the next year, had a massive heart attack. He said he wanted to die with his lab coat on. He did. In his pharmacy. It was super shocking to the family, but he got his wish, and I swear on the casket he was smiling. But within that, it kind of put me on this course because I was pre-med. I wanted to be a medical doctor, and it got me thinking a little bit differently. Like, well, yeah, the drug is always there, the surgery is always there, but what gets you to the point where that disease sets up? What gets you to the point where that happens, right? And we have thousands of various things, everything from getting hit by a bus, from you didn't win the genetic code when you were born, like that was not your game. Um, but everything in between there, you can manipulate. You can do things to feel better, proper diet, exercise, all within whatever your typical health parameters are. There's always room for improvement. When I was at college, I was at a liberal arts college, and they made me take. That was actually one of my favorite classes. Was an Asian philosophy course. So Confucianism, okay, Buddhism, okay. We got to Taoism, and Taoism was this whole thing about balance, right? We don't want too much one way. We don't want too much the other. And that's at the core of Chinese medicine principles. Um, During my junior year, of all things, I got a postcard in the mail during the Christmas break for an acupuncture school open house. And I went to that open house. I came home with the paperwork. I filled it up, and I filled it out, and I was enrolled in my master's degree because there wasn't a doctorate back when I started that program at the same time. Now I could do that because they were giving you a bachelor's in professional health science because there's no undergrad for Asian medicine. So I got doing my second semester of my junior year, my first semester of my master's degree program at once. And I loved it so much. It just kind of completely enveloped me, and I never looked back. And that's kind of how I got here.
Ah, yeah, that's amazing. That is it's it's great that you're, like you said, your granddad, obviously he was part of the medical system, but that he was willing to kind of look outside and be like, possibly this is not the best way, and that stayed with you. I think that that's still true today. I think it's with all of there's ancient Chinese and all of the kind of things when you look back into the old days with medicine, all of them kind of knew that the body could heal itself. And,
Yeah.
say there's the saying, obviously, let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food, and things like that. And obviously, you're talking about balance with that. It's like we knew it as humans, but we've somehow lost that knowledge, maybe due to the greed of medicine and other things. But it's a shame that we've kind of thrown that away a little bit.
Well, I do have some hope, Brian, because I see, and in the last year, and hopefully this is going to actually happen a lot. In about a month, I have Johns Hopkins medical students coming to my office
Oh,
to
wow.
see what we do and look at some of the alternative practices that we have. We also offer cryotherapy and red light therapy and sauna because when we talk about the flaws of Western medicine,
Mm.
it's not the practitioners.
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
people to understand that they're bound by a system that is not serving them. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if that system is socialized and is covered universal medicine. There's still people selling drugs. There's still people pushing new equipment. Now we need that. We need new technology. We need new innovation to help people live longer, healthier. But we're forgetting, the baby's going out with the bathwater. Like, oh, maybe every meal we eat shouldn't come out of a box. Maybe it isn't great to be sitting under artificial light all day. Maybe we should be outside a little bit more. Maybe we should get hot. Maybe we should get cold. A little bit. We're not talking where our bodies are not being stimulated like they were either.
Yeah.
And all of these things, we're starting to see the effects. Huge amounts in preventative diseases, heart disease, diabetes. These things, going back 100 years, we didn't have them at these rates. So I'm not giving up my technology, but at the same time, where is that point where uh, I live and I'm actually still the animal that is a human being and still in the modern world? And I think, uh, if we look at these Taoist principles of balance, that's where that all lies, right? I can sit there on my iPhone, but it'd be nicer if I was outside taking a walk while I'm doing it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that balance is key. Like you said, it's we're never going to go back to getting rid of all the technology and all the things we've got. So we have to make the best of it and try and balance it out with these other things. I mean, I suppose people would describe them as biohacks, but I mean, I guess in things like Chinese medicine, I guess that's just what we should be doing. I guess it's not a biohack.
I used to be really into that word, right?
Mm.
And then the pandemic hit, and I'm not going to start slinging mud at people that punch harder than me or bigger than me, but there was this kind of thought that if I'm okay, I don't care about anybody else, right? And there was this misnomer that we're all rugged individuals, right? No, that's not good community health. That's not good
Mm.
societal health, right? So what do I want? I want everyone around me to be healthy.
Yeah.
And why? Because then I can stay healthy. It's easier for me to be healthy if I'm in a healthy society, unless I live in an ivory tower and then I don't give a shit about anybody else. I'm sorry to say that, but that COVID did some. I'm going to try and talk about positive elements of COVID, which sounds so weird, but I definitely saw it in my clinic. The
Yeah.
first people to come in were those Western practitioners that were in the hospital systems that saw the toll it was taking on people. They were coming in to deal with the stress and the grief of it. But when the masses came back, they came back in a big push because they realized it's not going to be a drug or a shot that saves me. It's going to be the things I do in between those doctor visits. It's going to that keep me up and running. And our medicine, we've got a membership that looks like a gym membership, and it's like, why? Because that's what you need, right? You don't go to the gym once, do a bunch of sit-ups, and then go, oh, look at that washboard stomach. You go weekly, you dedicate, you look slowly over time, and that's where we really move the needle to health. And it's not fun, it's not exciting, it is not, like it's not, hey, I had that one donut, now I'm oh god, I might as well, phone it in, I'm done, right? It's no, it's what we do consistently over time that builds to that health. And that's really where I think traditional medicines excel. And when we have a field like East Asian medicine, where we have so many evidence based modern studies showing, yes, this works, And the funny thing for me is, right, that's not n equals one. They did the same thing on everybody and they still got good results. Now imagine if you're sitting on my table and we're customizing that treatment to you, that result gets even better. And that's where I get really excited because here's this body of knowledge, but how do I apply it to you in the moment, laying on my table right there? And it's so exciting for me.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's about lifestyle, isn't it? That lifestyle medicine.
Yeah.
It's as you said, the things that you do each day, are what make the biggest difference. When it comes to something like acupuncture, obviously you said, all the practitioners will do it differently. You do it different for each person. What is it that guides you into exactly what they need or what type part of the body you need to work on?
You're talking about this system of diagnosis, right? So there's a lot of Q&A, right? We ask,
Mm,
somebody's coming in and they might be talking about their headaches, and while we're asking them, hey, where's the headache? How often are you getting it? How severe is it? What helps it? What makes it worse? We're also asking questions like, well, why do we have a 10-minute discussion about my bowel and bladder function? Well, because it's all related, right?
yeah.
I had a dentist once say the funniest thing in a lecture, and he goes, at some point, the medical community decided the teeth weren't party. Like, here's dentistry, but here's everything else. And it's the same thing with like, well, maybe not so much in other countries, but here, pregnancy is kind of treated like a medical condition, right?
Yeah.
No, that's a natural physiological response when a woman is pregnant. Like, this is what's supposed to happen, yet no, we treat it like, oh my god, this is a health concern. And yes, there are high risk pregnancies, I'm not taking away from that, but no, this is what is supposed to happen, right? So we don't look, we don't look at just this part's calling out, right? There's an expression in China, don't spank a crying baby. Okay, that's the symptom, but what's the underlying issue, right? So our
Mm,
classical textbooks say very flowery things like the root of all disease is first rooted in the spirit. Oh, there's some truth to that. It sounds a little wishy-washy. And what do you care if you're on my table looking for some back pain relief? We don't need to get into a conversation of like why this is due to your job or your recent divorce or something, but that's going to be in the back of our head. After we do those questionings, we do palpation, right? We're going to feel the pulses, right? We have three positions on each wrist, and I liken that to a frets on a guitar, right?
mm,
So if you have a guitar string, here's three different spaces, and then we have an upper level where we're barely touching that guitar string, and then we have a deeper level where we're pressing in. That's six positions on each side for a total of 12. Well, we have 12 channels on each body, on the body. So each one of those pulses maps out to one of those channels, and that kind of helps us figure out which channels are most out of balance, right? So the symptoms plus the pulses, and then we'll palpate those channels. Some people will look at the color under the eye. Some people, sounds weird, will smell people, right? We have five different smells, five different tastes. We don't taste patients. Uh, but the patient may report a certain taste in their mouth or
mm,
craving a certain type of food. And that'll kind of, right? We don't want to jam somebody into a bucket, but we're looking for tendencies. And
mm,
then we want to go and work on that channel to help support the whole system, right? Whichever one's most out of balance is the one that we need to harmonize before we go look at the symptoms, right? The idea of like, I want to build you up. Why? Some expressions are like rising tides raise all ships, right? But if I build up your body as a whole, in general, we would say, oh, we have more energy to work on that problem, right? So it's kind of a 1-2 punch. Treat you as a whole person, then okay, let's go do some stuff for that headache. Let's go do some stuff for that uh, immune system issue, right? IBS, whatever it is. We can help because we're raising your whole body's ability to heal.
yeah. Yeah. There's two huge differences that I can pick out there from that to the traditional medical system. Like you said, you mentioned it already, they're split the body up. Obviously you said there's
Mhm.
teeth, the pregnancy, but then, you've got like heart section, one for cancer, one for diabetes. They don't treat, the body as one whole thing. It's broken up. And then the other thing would be that they're not treating the root cause. They just
No.
treat the symptoms. So yeah, I think that's getting down. You said you need to get to the actual root of it. And like you said, it makes perfect sense that if you do that first and bring everything into balance, then you can deal with whatever other issues are left on top when the person's in a better position.
Yeah, and look, I do believe things like painkillers, over the counter NSAIDs, if you need them to get through, yes, don't not use them, but you should also be looking at like what do I need to do to fix my whole system so
Yeah.
everything works better, right? I'm not anti-surgery, like right, you're hit by a bus, I should not be your first stop. You know, like go make sure nothing's bleeding, nothing's broken, and then we'll deal with some of the soreness and aches and those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Like I guess, for example, like you said with a headache, like yeah, you could take a pill to help with the pain of it, but what's caused the headache is what you want to look at to
Yeah.
get down to the root cause.
And you can look at so many different variations of that. Is it hormonal? Is it structural? Is it, it's stress related? Is it lack of sleep? I mean, there's so many underlying reasons for that. Uh, and normally, Western medicine is very X, Y, and Z. Here's the tests we do.
Mhm.
Based on those results, here's the drugs we're going to give you or
Yeah.
the intervention we're going to do. And we need both systems. I'm not anti that. I'm saying that, let's try the more, in this case, the traditional practice is more conservative, right? We're doing less to you. Uh, and then even if you need those other Western interventions, that does not take away East Asian medicine, right? We can still do acupuncture if you're getting chemotherapy.
Yeah.
We can still do acupuncture if you've just had surgery. So I'm a big team do both,
Yeah.
but in so much as if you're not in a life or death situation, well, maybe try ours first. Yeah, and see how far you get, and then see maybe you just need a little extra from Western medicine. Then, hey, I'm going to be hooked on this pill the rest of my life.
Yeah, exactly. So with cupping, I think you've written a whole book on cupping, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so cupping and one of the things I love about it, I mentioned its history. It goes back so far, but it spread throughout the world before we even called the silk trade route the silk trade route. Um, and it was always a folk medicine, right? So I've heard people call it grandma's medicine
Mm.
because I taught at two acupuncture schools. One was in Manhattan, and they had a large international student population. Every one of those students, when we got to the cupping, when we started talking about that, said, "Oh, grandma used to do that." Right. So there's a kind of like this. I love that because there's like this like historical connection to it within most people's family, right? They always had a family healer, if you will, and it was normally grandma.
Yeah.
Uh, but the variations on how they did it was always getting that vacuum, right? And
Yeah.
traditionally, it was done with fire on the inside of the cup. It's not meant to heat the cup. You don't want
Mm.
something hot stuck to your back. It's just to burn the oxygen and create that vacuum. So traditionally, buffalo horns, clay cups, slices of bamboo, uh, and fire. Well, today we have suction cups that are plastic that have a one-way valve. We have silicone cups that literally just squeeze the air out. We have cups that screw up and actually create a vacuum. So you have all of these methods that one, I'm not going to be using a cup that breaks.
Yeah.
Two, I'm removing the fire. So it seemed so appropriate to hand that back to people because it was being done in households worldwide for thousands of years.
Mm.
And the book was written it's not meant for other healthcare professionals. It's meant for those people that are taking care of their families at home and their friends at home. And, the people that are overdoing it at the gym. I mean, some of these silicone cups, they're like little nesting dolls. We at my clinic, I have a set we sell that's 12 little cups that, about the size of a tennis ball. You throw it in your bag, when you go to the gym and hey, I'm going to foam roll for a couple of minutes. Well, let me lay here with a couple of cups on the quad or something. It's been a little tight. So we have these abilities to take care of ourselves at really low tech, really low cost. And the theory is amazingly simple. So the book was written to kind of give you the guidelines, show you where not to cup, show you where to cup, show you the different tools available, show you some liniments and oils and lotions that you can put on if you want to do sliding cupping or turn up the effects of static cupping. And the book should take you about 2 hours to read. I mean, it's
Okay.
131 pages with photos.
That's amazing. So I mean, that was one thing I was going to ask. It is possible that people can do it themselves at home. It's pretty straightforward, is it?
It's I don't want to reduce it to just point and shoot, but
Yeah.
it's not too far off from there.
Okay.
I mean, I think going back and forth, that's the width of the book right there.
Yeah.
It's meant to be an easy read.
Yeah.
I didn't want to write it at a, I included some studies in there, but I didn't want to write it at this level that was inaccessible to people that don't
Mm.
have a healthcare degree.
Yeah.
This is the people's medicine. It was done in households forever. Come on. I know you're in Dubai. This is, you could go and just say, hey, who's doing cupping? Muslim faith has its own tradition of it called hijama, right? So you have cultural and country ties to this all over the world, and that's just an amazing thing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that that's one of what you mentioned earlier is one of the things that I think is really sad that we seem to be losing is that you said about there's always like an elder in a family who kind of
Yeah.
passes down these natural healing methods or these traditional methods. And I feel like it's kind of in the more recent generations that's kind of being lost and everyone just puts their full faith in the healthcare system and it's a bit of a shame that we appear to have lost some of that, I think. I don't know if you see the same as that.
Absolutely, and I think that might be marketing, right? I
Yeah.
I, I
Yeah.
hate to say that might be Western. Oh, no, you don't want to do that. That's voodoo. That's
Yeah.
nonsense, right? And chances are there's some really good stuff in voodoo that we're not looking
Yeah.
at too, which sounds crazy. But yes, these traditional practices do have value,
Yeah.
and even when we get into some of the wackier, weirder practices, a lot of that is about mindset and
Mhm.
intention, right? And we talk about the power of intention all the time, but like we're forgetting that like a lot of these traditional practices included that too. So how we frame our disease, how we frame our recovery has a lot to do with our outcomes, right? People
Yeah.
who think it's going to work, yes, that's all placebo, but they're more likely to get good results.
Yeah.
So don't
Yeah.
turn that down, turn that up. And if that's all traditional medicine is, and it's not. I mean, we have plenty of studies to show otherwise,
Yeah.
but even that has value.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. And when it comes to obviously talking about mindset and with mental health, do obviously mental health and physical health, they're all linked together. So
Yeah,
I imagine that
absolutely.
things like acupuncture and cupping, they're also going to be beneficial on the mental side, I would guess.
This is one of the greatest things we know, and this I'll explain it from the most likely culprit of why this happens, right? So we have fight or flight and rest and digest, sympathetic
Mm,
nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. You can go online and we're talking about the vagus nerve. But you can go online and there's at least a handful, and I actually just bought another one today of vagal nerve stimulators, right? Help you deal with stress. Well, one of the things that happens when we look at the parasympathetic nervous system and that rest and digest function, we're talking about increased circulation, deeper, slower breathing, reduced heart rate, better efficiency of the blood getting circulated, normalization of neurotransmitters. That's your serotonin, your dopamine, your oxytocin, and this beautiful one called anandamide, which bonds to the same receptor sites as cannabis. And ananda is Sanskrit for bliss. So it's kind of this bliss molecule. Well, we know if we can trigger one of those rest and digest functions, we get them all. Our brain goes, oh, our blood is flowing more smoothly. We must be in rest and digest. And it triggers all those other things. Well, after about 10 minutes of acupuncture, that happens. After massage, that happens. Few minutes into cupping, that happens. Why? Because we've increased circulation. So all these other things happen, right? So we know serotonin and dopamine have to be in this right level. Too much, we get anxiety. Too much of the other one, we get depression, right? Two huge things. Oxytocin is a bonding chemical. It makes us feel more connected to other people. Anandamide is a bliss chemical. We feel better, right? So we get these when we do these practices that make us feel better emotionally as well, right? A lot of people, and I actually had a teacher who was a psychologist, and she said she went back to learn acupuncture because what she found is when she had patients plateau or they got stuck in mental health, they needed to do something nonverbal to access like that cellular memory, to like put them in a place where the body's like, oh, I don't have to hold on to that, I don't need to guard that, we can talk about that now, to help deal and process with their trauma. And she was brilliant because of that. But that is something that's classical to Chinese medicine as well, right? You don't separate the psycho emotional, you don't separate the spiritual from the physical, it's all just density of energy.
Yeah.
And I think quantum physics says something like that too, but that always gets a
Yeah.
little screwy when we talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's similar. I interviewed a quantum healing guy a little while ago, and yeah, it's all very similar. It's funny. I interview these people that are from have all these maybe different traditional approaches, but they're all kind of saying the same thing. It's
Yeah.
like the same message that's coming through all of them.
It is like any the root principles are all the same. The expression of that, how it's carried out, how it's delivered changes.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is something I think we should put a lot of credit into, where we're all coming up with the same
Yeah.
kind of things. Just, oh, how do we get there is the different. You take a boat, I rode a bike or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the case with health, is that there's many different ways to get there. We don't have to, it's not like there's only one and you can't use another. Some people get a bit too tribal with their version and don't want to listen. But I think there's many ways to get there, and as long as we're getting there with one of them, then that's absolutely fine. Whatever's going to suit the person.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, very true.
Now, when people come to, I know you said that you look at, people as a whole and it's about
Yeah.
lifestyle. So what are some of the other things you do, as well as the acupuncture and the cupping? What are some of the other things that you offer to people that come to you?
Well, yeah, it's funny, and I don't call it life coaching because I see too many people. A lot of that advice that we give is coming out of those other branches of Chinese medicine. Well,
Mm,
what should I be eating? Well, how should I be moving? Right? And that has to fit the person as well. And when we do that big intake, when we do that big diagnosis, we have some framework to give advice for that. On top of that, like I mentioned before, we added cryotherapy, cold plunge,
mm.
saunas, red light therapy. We have exercise with oxygen therapy. We used to have hyperbaric, but we found the exercise with oxygen therapy to be a little bit more quicker and didn't require somebody to be in our office as much. But all of these things in my head sound like Chinese medicine. Why? I'm increasing circulation. I'm improving the quality of blood by adding oxygen. I'm stimulating the body via red light to make more cellular energy, right? We talk about Qi in Chinese medicine. Well, there's some people that would consider that, well, that's the ATP, that's the adenosine triphosphate in the cells. So the cells can do what they need to do. Well, red light stimulates that. Okay. What happens when we get cold? Well, I'm wringing you out like a sponge. Everything gets cold, it constricts, and then it warms back up. So what do? We moved fresh blood into that area as a net positive. What happens when you go in a sauna? You sweat, you get toxins out. And I hate saying that without quantifying that. It's trace amounts of cadmium and mercury. But it does stimulate more circulation, which will stimulate more detox via the liver. Um, so you're increasing circulation there too. So all of these crazy modern day, and sauna has been around forever, and cold plunge has been around forever too. But all of them, even though they're modern, still sound like traditional medicine to me. And that's why they're in our office, because it's all rooted in this principle of like treat the whole body, stimulate the body to work better. And that's where we get our wins, right? I'm not claiming cures, but if we can get you running better, you will feel better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess we could kind of say that what we're doing with all these modern things is just trying to replicate how people used to live, because our society is so different. Like you said with the
Yeah.
red light, they would have been out in the sun a lot more. The cold therapy, they didn't have heating. They would have got cold sometimes. People have the blue light blockers and stuff. Well, they wouldn't have had blue light to deal with. So I guess is it
Not at the intention, not at the levels they're at now, and not
yeah.
all day and night. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that we're kind of just trying to replicate how they lived in our modern way.
Well, I that's exactly it. I say this and I joke that, if my clinic, if people were outside for a few hours a day year round,
Yeah.
I would have an office that's a quarter of the size it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, why? I wouldn't need any of these services. Why? Because in the summer you'd be getting hot, in the winter you'd be getting cold, and your body would regulate to a regular circadian rhythm because of the light that you're getting from the sun, and you're getting that sky blue when it's supposed to be out, and that resets your circadian rhythm. And you're getting the red light, which powers your cells in the early morning and the afternoons. Yeah, absolutely. And we'd be moving more
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, definitely.
and it wouldn't have to be I power lift. It wouldn't have to be that. It wouldn't have to be high intensity interval training to mimic, to try offset sitting on your ass for 8 hours a day. You would have all of these things by being more human. The physical part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. When you think about it, the thing I always encourage people is just to try, sort of an ancestral living, like trying to think how
Yeah.
humans would originally have lived. And, we would have been outside. We were outside. We had to be active all the time or we wouldn't have survived. We always had things to do. And so it's, if you try and think about how we lived back then, and then, like you say, with the technology we have, we can kind of replicate some of that now, which is what these, biohacks or whatever they call them, I guess kind of are. So I guess that's a good thing that we can try and get as close as we can to
we
it.
we can try. I really things though is we can't mimic, like we can't just turn off the stress.
Yeah.
Right? There's a certain amount of like we have to be productive, we have to be doing these things, right? And if we look back even 100 years ago, we weren't working like this.
No.
And we had more time off. Hey, sun's down, we're done.
Yeah.
Not like, hey, let me grind for another 3 hours. And that is the one thing I think society wise is going to be the big struggle. Like, hopefully AI frees us and none of us have to work again. I don't know if that's going to happen, but within that, that's the big thing is like, how do
Yeah.
we put down that stress? How do we put down, all of that so we can enjoy being outside more and we don't have to bust our ass.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. Yeah. That's definitely a huge one. Do things I imagine things like meditation, is that something you
Oh,
you look at as well? Is that
that is my number one. Like, when I do a lot of these podcasts, I go, "What's the one thing you would say if somebody could do?" It's always meditation. I
yeah.
I mean, I'm not here to plug products or anything. This is my meditation headband. It's by a very I put a little mandala on the front of it, but it's by a very popular company. I think they do amazing things. It's not going to make you meditate better, but it's going to hold you accountable. It's going to help you meditate. I've been doing that and using that consistently. I'm almost at 2,200 days in a row.
Wow.
And I've been practicing meditation since 1994. I kept falling off. This is the first thing that's made me consistent. But that little, and some days they're 5-minute meditations.
Yeah.
And then some days I'm like, I'm going to try for an hour today. But the consistency is the key with meditation. The benefits are huge. The ability to deal with stress, like we've been
Yeah.
talking about, it definitely goes up. Your ability to handle situations that you don't want to be in goes up too. So it's my number one biohack that's as old as us. you know.
Definitely. And is it obviously you mentioned there that it can be different times, like 5 minutes or an hour. Is there a, maybe a sort of minimum amount of time that people would want to
Uh,
do it each
so
day?
so if you can get 10 minutes a day, like we so I have a podcast and we luckily landed the co-founder of the person that made this machine on our show, and I had to basically just I'm so enamored with her. I just like kissed ass and brown nosed until I couldn't anymore. And I'm like, please come on our show. And she was absolutely amazing. But we talked about a study that showed consistency is much more important than duration,
Mm,
right? So, yes, minimum dose is probably 5 to 10 minutes a day. But if you like, there's some people out there that sounds like pure torture to. 10 breaths, do 10 breaths and slowly work up. But doing it daily is going to give you bigger results than, if you're going to do an hour a week, it's better to get that hour every day broken down
yeah.
than sit one day for an hour or 2 days for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And is there anywhere that would, for someone who doesn't have a clue about how to meditate or meditation, is there a good place for them to maybe start and
Yeah,
find some info?
there's so many free resources. In fact, like I have a free course on Udemy, Udemy. It's a basic meditation class. Um, I made it as no frills as possible. Really, the big thing is to sit comfortably and breathe. There's so many free apps on your phone now. There's so many YouTube videos. I wrote that course during COVID. I looked a little different, but we all did.
Yeah.
And I had the time, so
Yeah.
I did that just to try and give back to the meditation community, and all of those people that have been meditating and who are like Olympic level meditators, who can teach you so much more than I can. But at the very least, just hopefully to get one or two people inspired to do that.
Yeah. No, amazing. I recommend people go and check that out. We'll share all the links at the end of the show for that. One more thing as well that leads into that, that I'd like to ask you on, breathing. I know,
Yeah.
breathing sounds like such a simple thing, but that can be effective too, right?
Absolutely. And that's at the root of like Qigong, right? So people know what Tai Chi is, right? This
Yeah.
is a slow martial art. Half arts, half Qigong. Qigong means basically breath work, or
Okay.
energy work, right? And what we're doing is coordinating breath with movement. And a lot of these movements can be very simple, right? A lot of people hold the ball and then just expand and contract with their breath. But that's this mindfulness practice, right? That's like getting a deeper breath. There's some idea that as we stretch that diaphragm, not only we're getting more oxygen to our body, but we're massaging the internal organs as well. We're putting some pressure on them. So there's so many benefits to that. And then if you wanted to get weird, you can start looking at
Mhm.
holotropic breathing or psychedelic breathing. There's a whole bunch of different names for it. But to get you into an altered state of consciousness, which yeah, you don't actually need to do LSD or drugs to get into that if you want. And certainly we can glean some information about ourselves there as well. But yeah, breath work, taking nice, slow, deep breaths helps us to get into that relaxed state. It's something we can do and put our intention on our breath when we're meditating. We can do qigong, we can do walking meditation where we're focusing on our breathing. So there's so many things that we can get out of that, and getting that oxygen and CO2 exchange is kind of at the core of all that.
Yeah, and I guess they're all kind of tying back into that, as you said, getting you into that relaxed state, getting the
Yeah,
blood going, getting the oxygen going around the body, and that's basically that state that basically everything that we spoke about today is kind of trying to get you back to that state.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I hope that's something that people can take away from today. But listen, thank you so much for your time. But before you go, tell us everywhere people can find you. Your website, social media,
Yeah, sure,
whatever.
sure. So I love just pointing to my website because everything's there. That's my clinic website. I know a lot of your listeners are probably worldwide, so if you're ever in Baltimore, stop by. But the website is Charm City Integrative. Charm City is the nice name for Baltimore. So charmcityintegrative.com. My book is The Cupping Book. You can go to thecuppingbook.com. It's listed on my website. It's on every online retailer worldwide. And then our socials, get them off our website. We're on every platform.
Awesome. And you said you do a podcast too. What's the name of the
Yeah,
podcast?
so the podcast is called Irreverent Health, and we get to have really kind of out there crazy conversations with some really brilliant people, and it just makes it fun, we dive into some lesser discussed health topics.
Yeah. Sounds awesome. Well, I will share all those links in the description so everyone can easily find them. I encourage them to go and check that out. And once again, thank you so much for giving us your time today. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, this has been so much fun, Ryan. Thank you so much.
No problem. And thank you everyone else for listening. We'll see you again next week. And until then, let's get optimal together.